Hey guys, OCP Communications, and welcome to my review of John Carpenter's The Thing. This is, without a doubt, my all-time favorite John Carpenter film. He's done so many great movies, but this would definitely be my pick for my favorite. It's also my favorite Kurt Russell movie. I would definitely say it is definitely my pick for the best remake of all time, my personal opinion. And it's also my pick for my second favorite horror movie of all time, a number one spot going to Creepshow, because Creepshow is the first horror film I saw all the way through. The Thing was the second horror film I saw all the way through, and that was actually a fun experience and a good memory for me because my stepfather, he really enjoyed the movie, so he had it on DVD, and I was too young to actually watch it, but one night I decided, why not? I decided to be a bad boy, and I grabbed the DVD and I watched it on the computer in the den over at my grandmother's house in Portland, Oregon. Um, I haven't lived in Vancouver, Washington for the majority of my life. This has been about maybe close to 3 years here. I've lived the majority of my life in Portland, Oregon with my grandmother and at her house. And so that was a pretty memorable experience for me and one of the most nail-bitingly tense, scary, uh, horrifying experiences for me watching a film. And I think that compiled with Creepshow is what just made me obsessed with horror movies. It really is what made me a fan of the horror genre. And The Blob is also another one that I saw at a young age too, so that really helped too. But the remake of The Blob, not the original, which the original has its moments. Just like the original, the original, The Thing from Another World. Um, I saw it one time on a cable years ago, and it wasn't too bad. But I'd definitely say I prefer John Carpenter's film over the original Howard Hawks production. Now, the watching the film, like I said, was unique. It was very, very. There was a lot of suspense already, you know, when I was watching it. Because forgive me for taking a while to try to, get my memory going here, because it happened a long time ago, and there was a lot of suspense already. The movie was suspenseful enough as it was, but there was added paranoia, there was added suspense while I was watching the movie for the first time because I wasn't supposed to be watching it. So I was always looking behind me, and this is in the middle of the night. There's no lights on. It's completely dark, pitch black darkness, and and it wasn't even that big of a screen, but it didn't matter. It was just an amazing. I was enthralled. It was an amazing experience, and definitely with the suspense was definitely even 10 times more suspenseful than it already was, because of the fact that I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. And so that was actually, I thought, was a really memorable experience for me. And luckily, I didn't get caught, but that just added so much more to it. And that's going to be something I think would be unbelievably hard to replicate because there isn't anything that I'm not supposed to watch nowadays. I'm an adult, so I can watch whatever the hell I want to. So when you're a kid and you're not supposed to be watching this type of movie, and you're watching it late at night, and you're just keeping an eye on sounds and things, and making sure your parents don't hear you and don't come in and see you watching this movie you're supposed to be not supposed to be watching because you could get punished for it and all this kind of stuff. There was a lot at stake. There isn't high stakes like that when you're an adult. You just pop in whatever movie you want. So that was definitely a great experience to have watching the film for the first time. Now, that was the first time I saw the film all the way through, but it actually the first time I was introduced to the film was through a photo. Uh, I remember this vividly because it scared me, and this photo still scares me. Uh, that and spiders in some instances, and the photo was of the Norse creature by Rob Bottin. And the reason why this scares me, and this photo still scares me to this day, even the scene with the Norse creature, which is unbelievably amazing practical effects by Rob Bottin, I still look away. I still cover my eyes. And I'm 25 years old, and I still do that. And I think it's because it's something that's deep ingrained in my subconscious. From when I was younger, I checked out these monster movie books from the library. And there was this particular book in the library called Monster Movies. And it was in the library, it was in the children's section. And I checked it out. And it was pretty cool, you know. You had pictures of, it talked about the universal monster, classic monsters like Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy, and so forth, Invisible Man. It talked about King Kong. It talked about Gremlins, which is pretty harmless. And then I flipped to one page, and there was an up close shot of the Norse creature. And that scared the ever loving daylights out of me as a kid. And, you know, I flipped open to that page, and it was like, ah, you know, it was terrifying to me. And that would be, I mean, for a kid, I mean, you're not expecting it. That's some scary shit. Why was that book in the kids section? Gave me nightmares. Damn it, Lake Oswego Public Library. Damn you. No, but really, that's all in jest. In a way, I'm glad. Another thing I have that I can personally attach to this film. And you know, it's just that creature, that Norse creature to this day still freaks me out. And that's a testament to Rob Bottin and his effects, testament to John Carpenter and his direction, as well as the cinematography by Dean Cundey. It's a, you know, it's a testament to the film and its lasting power. So that's my introduction to the film, which I thought would be a good way to start this review, because I really do love this movie. This is one of my all-time favorite films. So I thought it'd be a good way, you know, to start the review is to introduce you guys to my introduction to the movie. And feel free, if you want, in the comments below to leave your introduction to the thing. And this isn't the experience that I had watching it for the first time when I wasn't supposed to, isn't the only fun experience that I have of watching this movie. I actually have another one. I'll share with you guys right now before I get into the actual review. Um, I I brought this movie with me to my aunt's, and she's actually a pretty big horror fan. And so I decided one night, you know, let's watch The Thing. And I'd also watched My Bloody Valentine, I think, the same time earlier. So I wanted to watch The Thing again because I really liked the movie. And so we put it in the DVD player, we're watching it. There was a certain moment in the film, and I can't remember the exact moment where it was, but we started hearing this weird noise in the house, like fluttering around and moving or whatever. It was a really weird kind of, it was very eerie. You're already watching a creepy, eerie, scary movie, and then my opinion, one of the best horror films of all time, and you're hearing like flapping, that sounded like flapping of wings. So I'm like, did a bird get in the house or something? And then literally a bat just comes flying into the living room. And of course, I pause the movie right away. The bat's flying through the freaking living room, flying up into the top of the ceiling. My aunt and my uncle are freaking out. My cousin, you know, it was pretty memorable. Some fun moments too, where my cousin trying to tell her dad, you know, don't kill it, don't kill the bat, and trying to swat it with a broom, and trying to catch it in something and send it outside. It was definitely an interesting experience, and of course, we finally did catch the bat and send it outside. And then afterwards, and we laughed about it, and we played you know, finished the movie. But all the while we're watching the movie, after we, you know, that point, we just kept thinking about the bat, and you know, so that was another thing that was on our mind, is like, did the bat, I don't even know if we even caught it. I think it like flew out on its own somewhere, and so we were wondering where it was. So that was another paranoia sort of thing. Are there gonna be more bats in here? Is a bat gonna fly in here again? What's next? Is something else gonna pop, fly into the living room? But yeah, I thought that was a pretty fun experience. Um, and even recently, I was watching this film again, or watching it late at night on my Blu-ray player. And I guess I had it up too loud because my mom comes in and it's in the middle of the scene where the dogs are getting assimilated by the thing, and and in the middle of that scene, in the middle of all that carnage and creepiness, my mom starts banging on the bedroom door. And of course, that I didn't expect that, so I was like, "Whoa!" That made me jump out of my seat. And then, of course, I know what she's wanting me to do, so I'm yelling, turn around, yelling backwards. I'm like, I'm turning it down. I'm turning it down. It's down. It's down. It's down. Don't knock on my door like that again. Uh, so, so yeah, it seems like every time, not necessarily every time I watch this movie, but a good amount of times I watch this film, that I seem to always have an extra added layer of paranoia. Uh, to the film, to the viewing experience, which I think is pretty unique actually. But anyway, get to the actual review here. This is a film, of course, directed by John Carpenter, which, interestingly enough, he wasn't the first choice. In fact, the movie was actually in production in the 70s. Interestingly enough, actually, um, it was so you have a lot of sort of interesting sort of. I mean, it's a remake of Howard Hawks's well-loved 1951 film, The Thing from Another World, but it's a little bit more like the novel by William Campbell, who John W. Campbell, not William, John Campbell, who wrote the original story, and actually, Texas Chainsaw Massacre Helmer, Tobe Hooper was the first director attached to the thing. Uh, because you have the whole sort of aspect going on. Producer Stuart Cohen and David Foster and Lawrence Truman, they took prospect of a remake of Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World, and they took it to Universal, where Truman and Foster Productions had a deal, which was in the mid-1970s. And they had the Sugarland Express writers Hal Barwood and Matthew Robbins, who had the rights, but they passed on the new adaptation, and Universal picked up the book from them, as well as the adaptation rights. While Cohen says he wanted his old USC classmate John Carpenter involved from the start, the director hadn't yet broken out with Halloween, and Universal had Tobe Hooper, director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, under contract at that point, and he was hired along with the writing partner Kim Henkel. However, producers weren't pleased with their script, which was described by Cohen as sort of an Antarctica Moby Dick with an Ahab-like character, whose name was the Captain, battling a large but decidedly non-shape-shifting creature. It was more of like a tone poem with a stab at the Southern Davis Grubb-like feel, and that sounds like a really shitty movie. And after meeting with Animal House Helmer John Landis, playwright David Wiltz was brought on, but that draft too failed to meet muster, and neither did a treatment from Logan's Run scribe William F. Nolan. The project then languished for a few years until the success of Alien saw it pick up steam again, and Carpenter, who reinvented the horror genre with Halloween, was loosely attached, although he didn't want to write the script himself. A number of scribes were approached, including sci-fi legend Richard Matheson, who turned it down. Quatermass creator Nigel Keel and the Deer Hunter writer Derek Washburn also tried their, luck on the screenplay, but the writer of the Bad News Bears movies, Bill Lancaster, who was the son of screen legend Burt Lancaster, proved to be the right fit. With Carpenter declaring his eventual draft, which was delivered 3.5 months late, as the best script he'd ever read. Even then, there was nearly never hitch. Just as the film threatened to be greenlit, Carpenter thought that a horror western project called El Diablo was close to being made at EMI Films, and nearly bailed. Walter Hill, Michael Ritchie, and even Sam Peckinpah were all discussed as replacements before Carpenter came back to the fold. And after all of that, Carpenter comes back into the fold, and he brings his passion, he brings his heart to the film, and it comes out on June 25th, 1982, and bombs. It makes $19 million in the U.S. I don't even know if it got an overseas release. It had stiff competition from E.T. as well as Blade Runner. Blade Runner ended up bombing as well, but just like The Thing, it earned a cult following over the years. But not only did it bomb financially, but sadly The Thing also bombed critically. And I'll save that discussion for later, for the end, because it is a really tragic story. It's in a way it's kind of the rise and fall of Carpenter as this new rising star, as the director who could be the next Steven Spielberg, the next big director in Hollywood. And it was a huge pitfall for his career that never deserved to be one. Now, anyway, so yeah, the movie, you had a little bit of backstory there. So you have the screenplay by Bill Lancaster. It's produced by David Foster, Lawrence Turman, Wilbur Stark, and Stuart Cohen. It has a really excellent cast. Kurt Russell plays MacReady, one of my favorite role he's ever played on film. Wilford Brimley plays Blair. Donald Moffat plays Gary. Richard Masur plays Clark. Keith David plays Childs. David Clennon plays Palmer. Really fun stoner-like character. Charles Hallahan plays Norris. Richard Dysart plays Copper, who's the doctor of the team, the Norwegian. They're not really the Norwegians, but the doctor of the Outpost 31 scientists who are out in this expedition. I don't know what they're in Antarctica for. T.K. Carter plays Knowles. Peter Maloney plays Bennings. Joe Polis plays Fuchs. Excuse me if I'm having a hard time speaking. Thomas G. Waits plays Windows, fun character. And you also have Larry J. Franklin, one of the producers, actually plays the Norwegian passenger with a rifle. There's an uncredited cameo of the voice of Adrienne Barbeau as the voice of the computer, the chess-playing computer. The film has effects, groundbreaking of makeup effects by Rob Bottin, which I would have to say is the best I've ever seen on film. And this was effects that were made by a 21-year-old. Rob Bottin was 21 years old when he did the effects for this film. Now, not only did he do the effects, but also Stan Winston in his studio lent a hand with the dog thing sequence. So you not only had one legendary makeup effects artist working on the film, you had two. That's quite a feat. And what did they get for their efforts? Nothing. Not a single award. I don't think they got a single recognition. They didn't win anything, and that's bullshit. You want to know what won the Academy Award for Best Makeup Effects in 1982? E.T. The Thing didn't even get a nomination. Not even a nomination. It wasn't even nominated. It's a bunch of bullshit. There's no other way to put it. It's a bunch of fucking bullshit. This movie now deserves one of those after-the-fact awards. Rob Bottin deserves one of those awards from the Academy who award him for his contributions to film and special effects for his work on The Thing. He deserves it. Eventually he did get his Oscar for Total Recall, but this is, in my opinion, the best practical effects I've ever seen on film. It looks downright real at points. There's some moments where, yeah, you can tell it's practical, tell it's not real. There's other moments where it's hard to tell because the lighting is done so well and the craftsmanship is just top notch. And if you tell me CGI is better than this, you're entitled to your opinion, but I don't know what the fuck you're looking at. I don't know why you would think that CGI, which I don't even understand why it still gets the nod over practical effects, is better than the practical effects in this movie. I don't see it. I will never see it because I don't see it. I don't see effects in that type of context. But anyway, that's a whole nother story, whole nother video. It had music by Ennio Morricone, which is one of my favorite scores of all time. John Carpenter, I guess, is a little bit uncredited for his contributions to the score. I guess John Carpenter was really, really a big fan of Ennio Morricone, and he decided to get him to score the film. He thought it would add some extra, element to the movie, even though it was pretty much a lot like John Carpenter. Um, John Carpenter said Morricone recalled about the thing. He said he's asked Carpenter as Carpenter was preparing some electronic music with an assistant to edit on the film, and Morricone asked Carpenter this. He said, "Why did you call me if you wanted to do it on your own?" And Carpenter said he said, "I got married to your music. This is why I've called you." And Morricone was quite amazed that he called me because Carpenter actually had Morricone's music at his wedding. And then when Carpenter showed Morricone the film, later when Morricone wrote the music, the two didn't exchange ideas. Carpenter ran away, nearly ashamed of showing it to him, showing it to Morricone, and Morricone wrote the music on his own without his advice. Naturally, as Morricone had become quite clever since 1982, he had written several scores relating to his life. And he had written one which was electronic music, and John Carpenter took the electronic score. Dean Cundey returned as a cinematographer and delivered, in my opinion, one of his best efforts. The cinematography in this is a standout. It's amazing. It really sets the mood perfectly. And I think the editing by Todd C. Ramsey was really solid as well. Overall, I think this is one of those movies, to me personally, it's a masterpiece. All these elements work together, and to expert effect, in my opinion. The special effects, the score, the mood, the atmosphere, the setting, the production design, the cast, the crew, the acting, the directing, the cinematography, everything just works beautifully. And you even have some solid matte paintings too, which you never see those nowadays. Matte paintings? No. Solid matte paintings by Alfred Hitchcock collaborator Albert Whitlock, which I thought they were pretty effective looking, even after all these years. The matte paintings of the spaceship in the ice, I thought they were pretty good looking. And I guess a little bit regarding the cast, Australian actor Jack Thompson was nearly cast in the lead role, while Ernie Hudson, Donna Pleasance, Brian Dennehy, and Lee Van Cleef all came close to parts too. Kurt Russell had starred in two of Carpenter's last three pictures, the 1979 TV movie Elvis and 1981's Escape from New York, but the director was wary of working with him too many times and initially looked elsewhere for an actor to play MacReady. Overtures were made to Jeff Bridges, Christopher Walken, Nick Nolte, Christopher Stopperson, and Sam Shepard, but all of them were unavailable or turned the project down. There were more serious meetings that were held with John Hurd, Tom Berenger, Fred Ward, Ed Harris, Scott Glenn, Peter Coyote, and Tim McIntyre, with the latter four all passing on the project, while Carpenter favorite Tom Atkins, who was in The Fog and Escape from New York, was an early frontrunner. Surprisingly, it was the Australian actor Jack Thompson, who had won Best Supporting Actor at Cannes for his work on Breaker Morant, and has gone on more recently to play parts in films including December Boys, Australia, and the upcoming the movie Great Gatsby, which already came out, who came closest, being flown in to read for Carpenter personally. But ultimately, the director decided the project would be best served with a reunion with Russell. Other Carpenter vets were in the running for parts too. Halloween star Donald Pleasence was considered for Blair, but it was decided to go for a less familiar face, and Wilford Brimley got the gig instead. And Wilford Brimley did a great job. And meanwhile, Lee Van Cleef was up for Gary, along with Jerry Orbach, Kevin Conway, Richard Mulligan. Excuse me, just brrr, there's a mulligan right in there. I keep doing a bunch of mulligans. And Powers Booth. While Russell's Escape from New York co-star Isaac Hayes was in consideration to play Childs, as were Jeffrey Holder, Carl Weathers, and Bernie Casey, while Ernie Hudson came very close to getting the role. And in the end, Donald Moffat and Keith David took the roles. And finally, Brian Dennehy, who had been up to play MacReady, was very nearly Dr. Copper. William Daniels also read for the part before Carpenter decided on Richard Dysart. Excuse me for drinking there. My throat was getting a bit parched. Yeah, Robotine was only 22 when he handled most of the effects, although Stan Winston was brought in for one particular creature. Robotine was a mere 22 years old when the film was in production. Botine had actually been hired by effects legend Rick Baker at the age of 14, and he went on to work with the Maestro and King Kong and Piranha, among many others, as well as some of the Star Wars creatures. And Botine even plays in the Cantina Band in the original Star Wars. The 20-year-old was introduced to Carpenter by director of photography Dean Cundy, and got a credit for contributing special makeup for The Fog before going on to his first solo gig on Joe Dante's Howlin'. I think Robotine also played Blake, the pirate, in The Fog as well. So this is not his first foray into a film with Carpenter. He created an astonishing werewolf transformation sequence in The Howling, which is still on par with Baker's American Werewolf in London. And he went straight onto The Thing, and he created and operated the majority of the effects himself, working 7 days a week, and had to check himself into a hospital once shooting Wrapped to recover from exhaustion. He did, however, have a little help, as the late great Stan Winston did the nausea-inducing dog thing puppet, although he was also impressed by Botine's work, and he was so impressed that he refused credit. So Stan Winston pretty much gets uncredited for his work on the film. And if Stan Winston refuses credit because he's so impressed with the young man's work, the Academy should have taken notice. But no, they didn't. And they still haven't, which is bullshit. But anyway, the movie was actually shot in the summer, because it was shot near the small town of Stewart in northern British Columbia. The research station in the film was actually built by the film crew, and they shot the film in sub-freezing winter conditions. According to the signpost outside the camp, the Antarctic research team is stationed at the United States National Science Institute Station 4. However, in early drafts of the script, the base was called U.S. Outpost 31. And even in the film, MacReady actually calls it Outpost 31. So that's what a lot of the fans go for and call the Outpost 31. The film took 3 months to shoot on 6 artificially frozen sound stages in Los Angeles, with many of the crew and actors working in cold conditions. The final weeks of shooting took place in northern British Columbia near the border of Alaska, where snow was guaranteed to fall. John Carpenter filmed the Norwegian camp scenes at the end of production, and the Norwegian camp was simply the remains of the American outpost after it was destroyed by an explosion. The Thing was Carpenter's 8th time directing a full-length feature and his first film under the production of a major film studio, and one of his last, sadly. So, yeah, it's just a little bit there of trivia. There's probably more, but yeah, the movie opened at number 8 in the box office and remained in the top 10 in the box office for 3 weeks, but it didn't do very well. It had an opening weekend gross of $3.1 million. cost $15 million to produce, so it made $19 million, so it was pretty much poor. Carpenter and other writers have speculated the film's poor performance is due to the release of E.T. 2 weeks earlier, and it was more of an optimistic alien movie, so more people went and saw that. But The Thing also opened up the same day as Ridley Scott's science fiction film Blade Runner, which debuted at number 2, but then tailed off afterwards. The basic gist of the plot is this: takes place in Antarctica. The Norwegian helicopter pilot pursues a husky to an Alaskan Malamute, I guess, specifically, to an American research station. Upon landing the helicopter, the Norwegian accidentally drops a thermite charge, destroying the helicopter and killing the pilot. Surviving Norwegian pursues the dog, firing a rifle, until he's killed by Gary, the station commander, played by Donald Moffat. The Americans then send a helicopter pilot, McCready, and Dr. Copper to the Norwegian camp for answers, but they find a charred ruin, which is a very atmospheric, moody, wonderful scene. I love the lighting. I love the way the set looks. I love you can see their breath on the screen. Very excellent, amazing, well done, well shot sequence. So outside, they discover the burned remains of a humanoid corpse with 2 faces. The split face, which is an amazing work of art by Rob Bottin. They end up bringing the split-faced corpse back with them. Biologist Blair, played by Wilford Brimley, performs an autopsy on the corpse, finding a normal set of human and internal organs. The camp dog handler Clark, played by Richard Masur, kennels the Malamute with the station's sled dogs, where it metamorphoses and attacks the other dogs in an amazing sequence when it comes to practical effects. When he hears the commotion, McCready pulls the fire alarm, and Childs, the station mechanic, Childs played by Keith David, incinerates the creature with a flamethrower. Blair's subsequent autopsy causes him to believe that the creature perfectly imitates other life forms. The Norwegians' records lead the Americans to a buried flying saucer. The station's geologist Norris, played by Charles Hallahan, hypothesizes that is likely over 100,000 years old. Or, as Palmer says, chariots of the gods, man. And Blair becomes increasingly suspicious of the others and withdraws, calculating that if the alien escapes to a civilized area, all life on Earth will be assimilated in a few years. Which is a very scary thought. And it's lead to a lot of people kind of comparing The Thing to AIDS, which is interesting because AIDS started to pop up around the same time this film came out. So some people compared The Thing with AIDS, which I really don't see it, but I mean, there is a sign in one of the rooms that talks about VD, which talks about a sexually transmitted disease. So maybe there was something to that, but I don't know. I think it's just coincidence. And anyway, so another biologist, Fuchs, played by Joel Polis, which I really liked his performance. He tells McCready that he's worried about Blair. According to Blair's journal, the creature's dead remains are still active on a cellular level. The camp then enacts safety measures designed to reduce the risk of infection. The creature assimilates Bennings, played by Peter Maloney, who already had a bad day because he got shot in the leg by one of the Norwegians. His day just got worse. But radio operator Windows catches him outside before his metamorphosis is complete. McCready burns Bennings before he can escape, and they discover Blair wrecked all the transports and killed the remaining sled dogs. The team corners Blair as he's destroying the radio and locks him in an isolated tool shed. That's a fun scene where Blair's just flipping out. And you guys think I'm crazy? Well, that's fine. Most of you don't know what's going on around here. I'm damn well sure some of you do. And McCready's like, Christ! Charles has got the chopper in the tractor. And he's killed the rest of the dogs. Gary, wait a minute. Now, Childs, go around to the map room door. Talk to him. Yeah. Norris, get a table from the lab. And Blair's smashing up the radio room with an axe while yelling. And he's like, yeah, I think that thing wanted to be an animal? No dogs making 1,000 miles through the cold? No, you don't understand. That thing wanted to be us. And if a cell gets out, it can imitate everything on the face of the earth. and nothing can stop it. And then it's like, okay, Blair, come on, man. You don't want to hurt anybody. And Blair whips out a pistol and shoots at Childs, but he misses. I'll kill you. So that's a fun scene. And so there's a lot of fun scenes in this movie too. It's not just a great horror movie that just really does a great job with paranoia and dread. It's such a great mood and atmosphere and some really standout special effects. But it also has really likable characters, and that's everything I really liked about the movie. That these characters, you didn't get a lot of in depth on their background, but they were likable because they all had unique, different personalities that could separate themselves from one another. So it wasn't like the Thing prequel where you didn't really have unique personalities. So it was just really just all the kind of characters just blended together and were rather forgettable. Here, these characters were fun. It felt like they were. You got introduced to them, and you realize that these are not fun guys. And it didn't need a huge block of backstory for all of them to actually make you realize that and enjoy the experience. It kind of felt like you were one of the guys with the film. And that's the other thing that's understated about the film is that the entire movie is male dominated. There's not a female presence in this movie except for the voice of a female on a computer and cheating bitch. But other than that, or some female contestants on a Price is Right videotape. But other than that, there really isn't a female presence. And I think that was a good choice because a lot of movies of this caliber had resorted to the dream of trying to be like Alien and would shoehorn the female presence in there. And even in The Thing from Another World, the 1951 film, there was a female presence, romantic interest. There's no romantic interest here, so it's a male-dominated film, and I think that helped the film in the long run. Now, so they end up, the team quarters Blair, they lock him in an isolated tool shed. Copper recommends a blood serum test to determine who is infected, but they end up turning on, but they find the blood stores have been sabotaged, so they end up turning on each other. So ultimately, MacReady takes charge and orders Fuchs to continue Blair's work, but Fuchs disappears. MacReady, Windows, and Knowles find his burned body outside. They basically figure out that Fuchs was going to get assimilated by the Thing and decided to kill himself, burn himself to death with a flare. And that's a pretty scary thing, would you do it? If you knew that you were going to be assimilated, would you be willing to immolate yourself, pretty much? I mean, it's a really, really tense topic. It's really a tough thing to think about if you think about it long enough. So Windows goes back to tell the others, and MacReady and Knowles investigate further. On the way back, Knowles cuts MacReady loose from the tow line, assuming he has been assimilated when he finds a torn shirt with MacReady's name on it. As the team debates MacReady's fate, he breaks in and threatens to destroy the station with a bundle of dynamite if they attack him, and causing Norris to suffer an apparent heart attack. And when Copper attempts to revive him, Norris transforms and kills Copper. And actually, which is an amazing scene of effects. MacReady incinerates the creature. The Norris creature scares the shit out of me and orders Windows to tie everybody up for a new test. And actually, before all this sort of events, you have these really great scenes. There's even a really awesome scene of the dog. And even the dog in this is a great actor. The scene where the dog is just in a one great panning shot by Carpenter. It's just walking through the hallway, and it doesn't look at the camera. It's in an amazing bit of acting by the dog. And it's also a good movie too for And another thing what I really like about this film is it's a good film that you can watch multiple times. You watch multiple times and make different sort of conclusions about who got assimilated and when and where. But like who got assimilated, where, and when. And a lot of different times you might have a certain theory, but then again you watch it again and you're like, well, maybe it actually is this. Maybe it actually happened this way. I know the dog went into some character's room in the beginning, and when I look at the shadow, it kind of looks like the hair is all kind of, curly. So I think it might be Norris. Bennings he gets cut. The dog brushes his tail against him, so that probably was how that's what I'm thinking. Maybe that's how the thing ended up assimilating Bennings, or not necessarily. He didn't assimilate him right then and there, but maybe that's how the order of things were supposed to go. But it's an interesting sort of thing to talk about. It's like who got assimilated where and when, and there's a lot of different theories that go along with that. Um, so I really like this scene where McCready is sitting down and he's got his tape recorder on. And it's a great piece of acting an understated bit of acting by Kurt Russell. He's talking into this tape recorder. And this is after all this craziness has happened with Bennings, I believe. And McCready's talking in the tape recorder. I'm going to try to do this the best justice I can. I'm going to hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. Storm's been hitting us hard for now. Storm's been hitting us hard for now. Fuck! Try that again! I'm gonna hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. The storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. Turns off the tape recorder, takes a drink of whiskey. Looks up the torn Long Johns, turns it back on. One other thing. I think it rips through their clothes when it takes you over. Widows found some shredded Long Johns, but the name tag was missing. They could be anybody's. Nobody trusts anybody now. And we're all very tired. Turns off the tape recorder, turns it back on after a short pause. Nothing else I can do. Just wait. R.J. McCready, helicopter pilot, U.S. Outpost, number 31. Turns off the recorder. And that's a great scene. And then this scene, which I really love, where McCready ends up talking to everybody, trying to tell them what's going on. This is where he comes up with this plan. And this is actually what happens where he comes up with the plan where he's going to do the new test, the blood test. Another great piece of acting by McCready, by Kurt Russell. And there's actually two of them. There's this one, which I really like this one. This is the scene where he gathers up everybody after Bennings. They're burning Bennings, and McCready comes in with this great quote. I know I'm human. And if you were all these things, then you just attacked me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won. So I just love that exchange. I love that quote. And then after that, he comes up with another good line, another good quote where he's talking about the test. We're going to draw a little bit of everybody's blood, because we're going to find out who's the thing. Watching Norris in there gave me the idea that maybe every part of him was a whole. Every little piece is an individual animal with a built-in desire to protect its own life. You see, when a man bleeds, it's just tissue. But blood from one of you things won't obey when it's attacked. It'll try and survive. Crawl away from a hot needle. So, it's really, really good. And Windows ties everybody up. And you have the whole sort of thing where Gary is talking about the test. This is pure nonsense. It doesn't prove a thing. Because McCready ends up, you do a test in his blood, and he's not the thing. Because a lot of people, they thought he was the thing. And McCready's like, I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You're the only one who could have got to that blood. Well, do you last? and then, of course, Childs is even freaking out. Childs is like talking about Windows. He ain't tying me up. And McCready's like, "They don't have to kill you, Childs. Then kill me." And I like that aspect of it. There's a lot of drama, and I know some critics are saying there's no drama. What are you watching? There's no drama. There's a lot of paranoia, characters turning on each other, and what more drama could you ask for in a film of this caliber, of this type of genre? What? There's no drama, and so you have the whole thing in this sequence, which is a jump scare that always gets me. I know it's coming, but McCready goes for the blood test to Palmer, and the blood jumps out and screams, and then Palmer ends up freaking out. The great effect. His head splits open, eats Windows. Poor Windows. I feel bad for Windows, man. He got so much shit, and he got, he had a shitty job as a radio guy. And then he got so much shit from everybody in this movie. Childs is giving him crap. He's like, Windows, you go with Childs. He's like, I'm not going with Windows. It's like, Childs, you said, I'm gonna kill you, Childs. And eventually, sadly, that was actually Palmer. It's like, I'm not going with Windows. Fuck you, Palmer. So of course, Palmer ends up actually. There's a reason why Windows shouldn't have gone with Palmer, because it was the thing. I don't know if he was the thing at that moment when that exchange happened. But of course, what happens is the test pile Palmer's blood flees from the copper wire. Now he's exposed. Palmer metamorphoses in a great effect and attacks Windows. Bites his head off, forcing McCready to burn them both. And that's the room where the VD poster appears. And there's also, pay attention to this, because this is something that not very many people have pointed out. And it's probably a coincidence, but it works in the theme of the film. On the wall that has all these board games in that room, there's one board game that is called Stay Alive, which I think really works really well with the whole theme of the film. Everybody on this outpost is trying to stay alive. And it just really is perfect, really. So anyway, McCready leaves Childs on guard, and the others head out to test Blair, only to find that he is tunneled under the tool shed. They realize that Blair has been infected the whole time, has been scavenging equipment to build a small escape spacecraft. Discovering that Childs is missing and the station's power generator is destroyed, McCready speculates that the thing now intends to freeze itself until a rescue team arrives. And of course, before all that, I gotta mention this fun line of dialogue after the Windows and Palmer are immolated or burned alive, burned up. This is a very memorable, fun scene. Of course, the whole scene, and of course, I can't believe I forgot this scene, where you have the whole scene after, with Norris, where his head rips off and grows legs and crawls around, and Palmer looks over, he's like, "You gotta be fucking kidding!" And McCready looks over, is like, "What?" And then he burns it. That was a really cool scene. Great effect too. Anyway, after the whole blood test scene, I love this. It was a great moment of levity by Donald Moffat after this horrifying sequence of events. It was nice to laugh, where Gary's all like, "I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!" And so I always crack up at that scene. And so anyway, what happens is after that, that's when they go after Blair. They find that he's tunneled under the tool shed. The power generator is destroyed. McCready speculates that the thing now intends to freeze itself until a rescue team arrives. So McCready, Gary, and Knowles decide to dynamite the complex, hoping to destroy the thing. While setting explosives, Gary is killed and Knowles disappears. Gary gets assimilated by the thing. Pretty much, it goes right through his face in a good effect. Wilford Brimley puts his fingers right through his skin and pulls him. Oh, actually, a cool shot afterwards too. He pulls him by the skin of his head, like his hand has become part of his head, and he just drags him along the ground. Knowles was supposed to die in a certain way, which I guess they couldn't film because it was too expensive. The thing was supposed to pop out of a box and kill him, and so he just disappears. As McCready rushes to set the charges, a larger monster with a little bit of stop motion emerges from below and destroys the detonator. McCready triggers the blasto with a stick of dynamite, and with the badass one-liner, the thing roars, it's like, roar! It's such an awesome effect too. I mean, it is amazing. It's right up there with the Alien Queen from Aliens, in my opinion. It's one of the most impressive visual effects I've ever seen. And the thing roars, and I love McCready's one-liner here. It's like, yeah, well, fuck you too. Fuck you too. Throws the dynamite into its mouth, it blows up, and the whole camp blows up in a very satisfying big explosion because they actually did physically blow up the set. It wasn't some CGI bullshit. This is real. It looks real because it is real. There's nothing more satisfying than a real explosion. A CGI explosion is nowhere near as satisfying as a real explosion. I still can't believe Hollywood hasn't gotten that through their heads. But anyway, the base explodes, and then McCready sits as the camp burns. Childs ends up appearing. Childs claims he was lost in the storm while pursuing Blair. Exhausted and with virtually no hope of survival, they acknowledge the futility of their distrust, sharing a bottle of scotch as the camp burns. And I guess there was a happy ending that film editor Todd C. Ramsey states. He made a suggestion for Carpenter to make a happy ending, purely for protective reasons while they had Russell available. Carpenter agreed and shot a scene where McCready has been rescued and administered a blood test, proving that he's still human. Ramsey follows this by saying that the thing had 2 test screenings, but Carpenter did not use the sequence in either of them, as the director felt that the film worked better with its eventual nihilistic conclusion. The alternate ending with McCready definitely proven to be human has yet to be released. And that's good. This is a movie that earned its nihilistic ending. The whole film had this overbearing, prevailing sense of dread throughout it, so it wouldn't make sense to have that type of happy ending. It really would, honestly, it wouldn't work. It would come out of left field. And this is the last quote from the film, the last lines of the film, and these are good last lines too. Charles and McCready. I went back to my old messed up of pronouncing his name wrong. Charles is talking about the fire's got the temperature up all over the camp. Won't last long though. Neither will we. How long will we make it? Maybe we shouldn't. If you're worried about me, if we've got any surprises for each other, I don't think we're in much shape to do anything about it. Well, what do we do? Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens. And then the movie ends with the just stellar score by Ennio Morricone. And that's the thing. I mean, I know, yeah, 50. I don't care. This review will be however long it's gonna be. It's an in-depth review / retrospective. This is one of my all-time favorite films, so I'm not gonna go light on this. This is as heavy and as long as possible here. And so that's the film. There's so many things that work, and I've repeated myself constantly about those. But now we're talking about the critical reaction, which is really, really bad. There's a lot of bad things. One critic called John Carpenter the pornographer of violence, which that's uncalled for. That is horrible. Carpenter didn't deserve that. And Vincent Canby from the New York Times called the film a foolish, depressing, overproduced movie that mixes horror with science fiction to make something that is fun as neither one thing or the other. Sometimes it looks as if it aspired to be the quintessential moron movie of the 1980s. That's pretty harsh. Time Magazine's Richard Schenkel wrote, designers Rob Bottin's work is novel and unforgettable, but since it exists in a near vacuum emotionally, it becomes too domineering dramatically and something of an exercise in abstract art. I don't see that. What's this emphasis on drama? John Carpenter isn't making Breaker Morant. He's not making Wuthering Heights. He's not making Kramer versus Kramer. He's making a horror sci-fi film. And I definitely do disagree with that. It doesn't need to be overly dramatic. Even Roger Ebert, he called the film disappointing. He said that although we found it scary and he thought that it was a great barf bag movie, which I think it's a lot more than just a great barf bag movie, he ended up criticizing the film for what he thought were poor characterizations and illogical plot elements, and ultimately gave the film 2.5 stars out of 4. Poor characterizations? I'm sorry, Roger. I definitely disagree with you on that. I think this has some of the best characterizations I've seen in a film like this. Poor characterizations, my ass. I definitely disagree with that. Totally, without a doubt, disagree with that. And if there's new light, more light, yeah, well, because I turned on a light and I don't know, I lost my sun. But anyway, lost the sunlight. But I'm sorry, poor characterizations is bullshit. Uh, I think it did a great job with the characters. You didn't have to have in-depth backstories for all of them. The film did a great job, like I said earlier, separating themselves from one another, giving them their own unique personalities. Um, so definitely disagree with that. In his review for Washington Post, Gary Arnold called the film a wretched excess. Jay Scott, in his review for Globe and the Mail, called the film a hell of an antidote to E.T. In his review for Newsweek, David Anson said astonishingly, Carpenter blows it. There's a big difference between shock effects and suspense, and in sacrificing everything at the altar of gore, Carpenter sabotages the drama. The thing is so single-mindedly determined to keep you awake that it almost puts you to sleep. Which I find is just unbelievably bullshit. And then this film was also nominated in the Razzie Awards for the worst musical score. Ennio Morricone's memorable, excellent, moody, brilliant score was nominated for a Razzie Award for worst musical score. It didn't win the award, but the fact that it was nominated is unbelievable. And it didn't stop there, folks. It didn't stop there, the critical just flogging of this movie. John Carpenter is actually quoted here talking about the reception of the film, saying that he takes every failure hard, but the one that he took the hardest was The Thing. He says that his career would have been different if the film had been a big hit. He says the movie was hated, even by science fiction fans. He says that they thought that he had betrayed some kind of trust, and the piling on was insane. And even the original movie's director, Christian Nyby, was dissing him. Which is just awful. Getting called a pornographer of violence, gave nothing but slander and slammed for his work on the film, where you could see he put a ton of, an unbelievable amount of passion into it. And then science fiction fans bashing him. And even the director of The Thing from Another World, a film that he idolized and really loved, was dissing him. And on top of all that, he gets fired from his next project. He was hired to do another film for Universal, an adaptation of Stephen King's Firestarter, and he was fired. Fired! Kicked out of the director's chair. And was replaced by Mark L. Lester. And I can guarantee that Firestarter would have been a hell of a lot better movie if Carpenter was behind the camera. Now, of course, we know that eventually he would get his career back on track with Christine in 1983 and do Starman in a way to sort of make up for The Thing, which I don't think he should have to make up for a movie this great. And this was one of the last films that he did that was produced by a major studio. And that was his career was at an all-time high, and then after this movie, it was at an all-time low for him. And he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve that. This movie was either ahead of its time or critics were full of shit. And we're being fucking stupid, and we're just acting, sucking Spielberg's dick for E.T., or overreacting to this backlash that horror films were getting around this time period. I don't know what it was, but their heads were stuck up their asses. And as you can see by the critical reaction now for the film, they took their heads out of their asses, and majority of them have pretty much praised the film. It gets an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a really high rating on IMDb, and it deserves all of those. It deserves every single bit of praise that it gets nowadays. But at one point, it was just bashed critically all the time by a ton of people. And that just boggles the mind to me. This is one of the best films of the 1980s. In my opinion, the best remake of all time, because it takes the original film and the original story it's based on and does its own unique vision. It creates its own unique vision, its own unique take on it that is as vaguely similar to the original as possible. It doesn't do shot for shit, literally. It doesn't do shot for shot copies of the scenes. It does its own thing. And it's all the better for it. And I'm just really glad that it finally did get the accolades that it deserved. Finally, after all these years. After all these years of just critical flogging. Which is just, I still don't understand that. And it still kind of continues today. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but I read a post on IMDb that really was an eye-opener to me. Where this IMDb'er saw the thing in the theater because his theater was showing these movies this October, horror movies this October, for old and new employees. And they showed the thing, and the employees that were of an older age loved it. But distressingly enough, the employees that were of a younger age hated the movie. They said it was boring. They said the effects were good for their time. They probably said it was cheesy, which I fucking hate that word. And they hated it. They said it was boring, it wasn't scary. And you're entitled to your opinion, but that shit pisses me off. Because I'm sorry it wasn't a jump scare minute movie like Paranormal Activity. I'm sorry it didn't have shitty CGI in it. I'm sorry it didn't have... The Thing is not a movie that had effects that were good for its fucking time. The Thing has some of the best practical effects ever. And if you say it doesn't, you don't know what practical effects are. You don't know how good they can be. You have no respect for practical effects if you think that this is not some of the best practical effects of all time. It wasn't just good for its time. It's still good today. It's great today. Not good, it's great. And the fact that that little slice of the younger generation hated it worries me. Because it just proves my point that a certain select amount of individuals in this younger generation just have lowered expectations. They don't give a shit about what's being offered to them by Hollywood. They just lovingly embrace whatever shit Hollywood shits out of its ass onto their plate, and they eat it with a shit-eating grin on their face. Like the motherfuckers in Solo. Gotten plates of shit, and they just eat it and love it. And I'm sorry, I don't like eating shit. I don't want to keep eating shit. I don't want to eat shit. And the output that Hollywood is putting out, especially in the horror genre, is shit. So, if the younger generation, a good amount of them, think this movie sucks, no wonder we're getting shitty horror movies. Because they think this, which is considered one of the best horror movies of all time, is shit. And they probably think some fucking shitty Paranormal Activity sequel is good. And of course, Hollywood's going to look at that, and they're going to be like, yeah, okay, this is what you want. We're going to keep giving it to you. So you like shit, we're going to keep giving you shit. We're going to keep shitting on that plate because you like eating shit. And I know it's harsh, but that's the way it is. Not saying that everybody in this new generation, this younger generation, feels the same way, but there's an overwhelming majority of them that do, and obviously have no context for for cinema. They obviously have no respect for elder cinema. They obviously don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they're fine with this endless stream of mediocrity that Hollywood keeps putting out, especially in the horror genre, and they're fine with it. They don't care. They have no standards. And they think a movie that like this, that should be held on a high standard, is shit. And that just proves to me that the horror genre, as it is right now in theaters, will continue to suck and continue to be shit because there's an overwhelming majority of people who think that this movie is shit. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable. I got a quote. I'm going to quote Palmer from this movie when it comes to when I heard that. People, younger kids, younger generation audience members who see this movie in the theater, the rare opportunity to see the movie in the theater, which I don't get to have, somebody that truthfully loves the movie with every fiber of their being doesn't get to see it in the theater, but these fucking fuckheads do, and they say that this sucks. To quote Palmer, you've gotta be fucking kidding. Unbelievable. But hey, you're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. But this type of opinion is going to ruin films. It's going to ruin the horror genre even more than it already is ruined. Because if you think this movie sucks, and you think Paranormal Activity, the marked ones, or The Purge 2, or this other fucking shit is great, or it's like Sinister or some shit, there's no hope for movies like this again to come out in theater because the fucking fan base thinks it sucks. I just had to throw that out there. It's a little bit of a rant, but that just pissed me off, man. And it just further solidifies my argument that a lot of movies suck nowadays because the generation, the audience members that Hollywood is trying to cater to the most don't have incredibly low expectations and low standards. It sucks, but it's the truth, and the truth hurts. And I also have to say that not everybody in this generation is like that. Not everybody in this generation shares the same sentiment. I have people who are subscribers on my channel and friends who are from this generation who love this movie and love movies like this and want to see more movies like this in the theater. And that's great. But it's that other percentage, which made Ride Along a box office hit, that worries me. That's the percentage that I'm talking about. That say, oh, they live in this vacuum. What you want to talk about by vacuum? They look at movies in a vacuum. And that vacuum consists of movies that have came out in the past 10 years. Anything new is automatically better. Anything new is better than the old movies because they're cheesy. And that pisses me off. And that gives me a very small amount of hope for the future of cinema, because if we are having new, younger generations of kids who feel this way, they're going to grow up and they're going to feel the exact same way. And that means the future of cinema, the classics, the things that work, the things that were great, are just going to be ignored and are going to be considered cheesy and corny and bad. And I don't like that. That scares me. That scares me even more than this film does. But anyway, I just had to throw that out there. But I know this is getting pretty long in the tooth, so I'll try to end it here. But anyway, I love The Thing. It's a great film. It's one of the best films of its genre, bar none. I don't see how people can watch this and be bored. I can watch this dozens of times and still be as entertained as I was the first time watching it. I think it has great characters, great effects, groundbreaking special effects, great atmosphere, uh, excellent moody score, solid. It is not really solid. I mean, spectacular cast, good acting. It's it's a masterpiece of horror cinema, of science fiction horror, and one of John Carpenter's finest efforts. So I really don't know what to say about the film. Rate out of 5 star. It gets 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up, 10 out of 10. I'd rate it infinity if I could. I mean, this movie is that great in my opinion. But some people just don't realize it. And okay, that's fine. To each their own, but this movie does not suck.